Right. Welcome to the live stream Monday the 9th of March 2026. I hope you're doing well. Today we're going to be doing all kinds of Chinese medicine chats. I've got a couple of questions from the channel to answer straight up, and if people have questions, if you're jumping into the stream now, you're most welcome to ask your question. Just getting a few things set up as we get started. Monday morning here in Perth, Western Australia, where I'm living, where I currently am situated. And I know people from all over the world kind of jump into these things, so it's kind of cool. I'm just going to set this up a little bit different. There we go. Make it a little bit that way. There we go. It's better. I'm not so squashed in the scene there. So awesome. All right. Have had a couple of really interesting questions here. One is a bigger one. And I think this person has asked several things here. So we will endeavour to answer this one. Let me put this on the screen. So yeah, hope you're doing well. Hope that life is treating you well this year so far. Just grabbing the first question. It's a bit of a case study, I would say, in a way. Where are we? Be it for today. Awesome. All right, put this on the screen. It's a big question, so where will it go? I'll just move myself out of the way. I'll put myself like that. Hopefully people can see this on here. Yes. So welcome everyone. We're going to endeavour to answer this question. This is from La Katrina, and she or he has put on, I think she must be because perimenopause, has had quite a few questions, I would say, I think. I'm sure I saw something this week and I said I was going to answer it in the chat, but now I can't see the question here. I hope they haven't deleted it because I hate it when that happens. When people ask a question and then they delete it off the channel, I'm just like, why would you do that? Like, it was a good question. Anyway, maybe I just can't find it. Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, there's heaps of them here. So I hope they haven't been deleted. It's all from the same person. I'm just going to screenshot the ones I can see, because if they have been deleted, they're going to disappear. Oh no, here they are. They are here. So this person's asked several questions. Look, we're just going to answer this first one first, and then we'll go from there. Now, if you have a question, please put it into the chat, so that we can have a chat about. It doesn't have to be a question. I mean, it could be a question, but it could be something you just want to ask about, or if with these things, there can be a bit of back and forth, which is great. We can sort of find out more about each other. I'm just in a weird mood this morning. All right, so this one says, I was diagnosed with spleen chi deficiency. I'm always exhausted. I'm also going through perimenopause, which has been really bad for me, causing extreme menstrual bleeding. He gave me moon pearls. I don't know what that is. It's probably just a proprietary name of a formula, something. I've never heard of that myself, which have helped greatly, and that's good. And at the same time, I feel really tired. I'm an overthinker, and I always wake up with a migraine that sometimes makes me feel like I might have a brain tumour. That's not good. I love flavourful food, so the bland diet makes me feel sad. Oh. And what foods and recipes do you recommend? And how long would you have to do that diet? Do you recommend a full carnivore, or can you add some fruits, as Paul Saladino recommends? So, yeah, if you want a comprehensive analysis of what's going on, this is the kind of thing a practitioner should really be helping you with. So just to give that caveat that I always give on YouTube, I'm not your personal doctor. I'm going to use this as an example. So this is not advice for you to do personally. because things can be nuanced. It's in things can change, and you are obviously under the care of a practitioner, which is great, and they should be able to answer these questions for you and give you some of this information. And most practitioners are somewhat trained in Chinese diet therapy, but they just don't have the time to practice it all the time, and that's why I also make this channel to kind of do some of that stuff. Because look, in my practice, I don't have time to explain the reasoning behind everything for people either. And also, yeah, I get that some people just don't. Some practitioners learned it in school and then they don't know. They don't really think about it much after that. So that's okay. I'm not bagging out your practitioner, but I'm just saying these are things that you should firstly ask your practitioner about as well. So there's quite a few. The reason why I've just chosen to answer your question is there's quite a few good points we can make here that will help a lot of people, I think. So the first thing is, if you do feel like you've got a brain tumour or you've got that extreme pain, you need to go to Western medicine and have that checked, because there's nothing in Chinese medicine that can rule that out or check that for you. We just can't. And that is the difference between the Han Dynasty and 2026. Like, we have modern technology that can detect these things, and then you can act accordingly. Now, you may not have that, and I understand that also in our society we have varying levels of healthcare availability to people with cost involved in that, and sometimes that can be part of the reason why we don't seek that kind of treatment. But if you're in Australia, you definitely could go through a GP, and if they don't feel that it's warranted, then that's a good sign that there's nothing that serious wrong, because they're not going to send you for a scan if you don't need a scan. So they have a process of elimination to sort of rule things out. So it's not a foolproof method that you don't have something like that going on. But yeah, I'm sorry also to hear that you're in such extreme pain. That's not great. It's very horrible to be living in extreme pain. Yeah, so that's one thing. Okay, the second thing is that I wanted to mention is there's a big difference in classical Chinese medicine to TCM in how we would go about treating these things, particularly things like fatigue, and the kinds of treatments that we have available. So, as in the type of herbs that are used to treat those things are different, and the basic differential is really that the classical Chinese medicine system uses a lot more warmer herbs, which in my experience can be much better for people with that kind of fatigue. When you're yang deficient, or even in TCM they're going to say you're qi deficient, classical Chinese medicine practitioner will probably say you're yang deficient, even if TCM says you're qi deficient. It's just like a difference in wording. It's really sort of looking at two things from a different way. But the treatment is different. So the treatment is warming herbs that will actually help that yang to rejuvenate, or it's got more chance of that happening than the other. Then, say for instance, like TCM's going to use herbal formulas like Buzhong Ichi Tang or Sujunza Tang, or these sort of things, which don't have really many warming herbs in them. And like in classical Chinese medicine, they often use formulas like Shen Qi Wan for men, and that has blood tonic things and warming things in it. And, for women, it's often, or for men, it could be that, and Tian Chung San and other formulas that are they just act differently. So these are not things you can get over the counter. They're really herbs that need to be prescribed in sequence from a practitioner, because you need to prepare your body to be able to take those herbs, as well as it's not just a matter of taking them. There's a bit of a process involved. So if this person wants to send me an email to the podcast email and tell me roughly where your location is, I can try and find a classical herbalist that's near you that you could see. And that may be able to help you with that deficiency kind of tiredness. But that aside, that kind of leads me into the diet idea, what you've mentioned there. And this kind of diet. So it sounds like you might have tried a bit of a carnivore diet. And So she asked, do you recommend full carnivore or can you add some fruits as Paul Saladino recommends? So you could do either of those things. And I think with the carnivore lifestyle, you are probably going to be able to experiment with what's going to work for you. So the most strict part of carnivore is a lion diet, which is just ruminant meat, salt and water. And then you've got variations all the way through. Now, technically, what Paul Saladino's teaching people or saying now, that's not technically carnivore, okay? It's still a healthy diet alternative to the modern classical Western diet. Not classical, but, the modern Western diet. If you really do have this spleen qi deficiency, I would recommend if you do eat fruits, you cook those fruits. That's something to remember. Okay, you've got to cook everything. You've got to have everything warm. So that's the downside of fruits, is they can sometimes be too cooling on the stomach and like digestive system all the way down. If people have a question, you're most welcome to put your question in the comments. This is just something we're starting with because I have to start the stream with a question. Well, I don't have to, but otherwise you'll just hear me ramble about something. So if new people are tuning in, please feel free to ask your questions into the chat. That's good. Let me know where you're tuning in from as well. That'd be awesome. So, if you haven't tried carnivore before, then that'd be something that you could start with. And I would recommend that because it is a really yang tonifying type of diet. It's a very warming kind of diet. It's also an elimination diet. It eliminates a lot of things that people are allergic to or triggered by or things like that. And it gives the spleen and stomach a bit of a rest. And then you could add other things in and then you'll definitely know how you feel. So I wouldn't recommend you do carnivore with the fruit because you're kind of wasting doing the carnivore. Do the carnivore first and get to the point where you feel good on it for a few weeks and then try to add the fruit in. And do that in the summertime. Don't do that in the wintertime. So if you're in Australia, you'll be coming into winter, and this is not the time to be really adding fruits in. Let's say it's March now. It's about to turn cooler. It's still hot here. It was 38 yesterday. It was really hot. I think 36 or something. It's really humid today. I think we're getting a storm in Perth tomorrow. Unusually humid. It's not normally humid here. Anyway, what I'm saying is as the weather changes, you would have more warmer foods. So coming into winter is a better time to be on the carnivore. And then coming out of that into springtime, that's when you would maybe add the fruits in if you really want to follow the seasons. The other thing with fruits and Paul Saladino is, and I like him. I think he's a great, what do we want to call him? A doctor. He's a doctor, but he's also just a good influencer, a good teacher, educator. He's interesting to watch his videos. I found it very interesting to see his journey away from full carnivore into the fruits thing. But you have to think about these people in a different sense to the average person. Like he has a lot more means available to him than the average person, right? So the stuff that he's eating isn't just like everyday fruit. It's like he's living in a tropical place and he can probably just go and pick it himself or get it from some fruit market that's locally there. It wouldn't be, hopefully, you assume with Paul Saladino, it won't be sprayed with, pesticides and things like that. And that's what I mean by means. Like if you've got the ability to go and get all that and do that, and you can see his whole day is, I'm sure he works. I'm sure he does because he has to make, you think he has to make a living of some sort. But, he has... I don't want to say unrealistic, but it's not everyone's going to be able to have that kind of lifestyle where you have this purpose-built house that everything's optimized for his sleep and all this sort of, like I've watched some of his videos where he shows you my routine and all this sort of stuff. So I'm not bagging him out at all, but I'm just saying that, and it's good to have that example because you want to see, okay, that's the ultimate goal, if you like. And with any of these people, you know, you want to look and see, do they look healthy? Like if they're not looking healthy, if they're looking worse and worse, or they're looking better and better, like that's a good thing to kind of see, right? So perhaps he exercises to the point where he's burning off a lot of those calories that are coming from, you know, the sugars that are coming from the fruits as well. So it depends on your scenario, I would say, as to whether fruits are a good thing. For some people with carnivore, now this might not be the reason why you're going to go into the carnivore diet, but for some people, if you have one thing that's not carnivore, and I'll tell you this from my experience, excuse me, a little bit of dust in the room. If you have one thing that's not carnivore, it's like it's almost opens the door for other delicious treats that you were not planning to eat that week or that day. And that's a bummer. And it's good when you're strict on it, because you're like, okay, you feel good, and like you do. I do feel good when I'm strict on it. But if you have one thing, then the next day you're thinking about other things, and that can be the same for fruits, right? So what I would suggest, if you can, is to go onto the carnivore and see how you feel. Make sure you have plenty of fat on it, and that way you'll feel satiated. And it's not really a bland diet. Like the flavor of meat is quite flavorsome by itself. You don't need to add a lot of other flavors to it. You know, most people their tastes will adjust after it, right? I actually think a carnivore kind of diet is a healthier thing for someone who is spleen qi deficient, damp, yang deficient. It's especially for a female, especially if you've had a lot of heavy periods, because that means you're probably more likely to be blood deficient, and the higher meats is going to help your body with its protein needs and help replenish blood. And it's not, I know people do it forever, and it's good if you feel that that's right for you, but it can be something that you just use to reset your body and just to see how you feel. Like I've done a carnivore diet now for almost 2 or 3 years, experimented with it on and off, right? So, and I know that I feel better when I'm on it versus when I'm not on it. I've done it enough times now to know that. But then I have to ask myself, oh, why did I go off it? Right? Because I like food too. I like the delicious taste of certain foods. Like, who doesn't love ice cream from time to time? Who doesn't love the taste of, you know, it's not like you love what that does to your body, but, you know, yeah. So, and I've also seen in some patients get much better results and be able to get off herbs that they have been really needing, because they were able to heal their body better on carnivore. Now, if you are going to do a carnivore diet, you want to make sure you have plenty of like bone brothy type of things, so you get lots of collagen in there, because that's what's actually going to repair your gut, so repair your digestive system. And that's kind of what we're working on with the herbs when we say we want to use warming herbs. Where do those warming herbs work? They work in the small intestine, so they're actually tonifying that area of your body. So, hello, Taris. Welcome to the chat. Welcome to the stream. We are 10 o'clock. I'm not sure what that means. Maybe there's a typo there. Or on the opposite time of me, maybe. So what I'm saying is those herbs that I was saying at the start that classical Chinese medicine people use to tonify work more on warming the body and repairing essentially your gut to do its job of digestion, so that then everything else is kind of set up to start repairing and start functioning as it properly should be doing. And a carnivore diet kind of is setting yourself up for that as well. So it's not like you can't take herbs alongside of carnivore. You can. I mean, carnivore people will say, oh, plants are poison, right? Some carnivore doctors will say that. But you will definitely know what's doing what if that's all that you're doing. That's the thing, right? So I would say give that a try. You know, do it in cahoots with your practitioner. Hopefully they're a sensible enough person to kind of think about that. So I hope I've answered this question. It's quite a big question there. If people have a different question, maybe Taras, you have a question, please feel free to ask it. Or you can that's what this chat is for. That's what the stream is for. I'm just looking at this one to see if there's anything I've missed. Yeah. So you don't want to feel sad with your diet. Like in the Qing Dan diet of Chinese medicine, that clear, bland diet, it is mostly a grains-based kind of diet. And I think you can achieve a similar thing with carnivore, and it's definitely more flavoursome. Like, there is an adjustment period that people have to go through. If you haven't looked up these practitioners already, I would suggest you follow Anthony Chaffee. He's a doctor, Dr. Anthony Chaffee. He's got a channel. I can't remember what the channel's called, but I'm sure you'll find it. You'll Google his name, it'll come up. And Dr. Ken Berry's channel as well. And he has a video on what's carnivore, what's keto, what's a ketovore type of diet. And those are good. They're ones that I send people to when maybe if I have patients that are interested in that kind of thing, to check out the idea of those diets, and sort of also how do I get started on that sort of a diet. Those guys will tell you step by step what to expect, because there is a process, right? It's not just like you don't just start the diet and feel great straight away. For some people they do. That's kind of what we want to say about that. Like, so thanks for your question, and I can see that you're really interested in Chinese medicine, because there's like probably 10 or 15 questions here that I could see on the channel there, which is great. So there's another one here about dampness, but I'll just save that in case people in the live have a chat now. Hi, Sarah. Sarati B1, awesome. Welcome to the chat. If you guys have a question about Chinese medicine or something, you're welcome to ask it. That's what it's for. Let's get rid of this thing off the screen. Yep. So I hope people are doing well. You might have had, might be still in the weekend if you're in America. In the UK this will not be a good time for the UK. I think it's the middle of the night for you. Okay, so this is from the same person. So maybe this question was before that. I can always tell when people are having a good time on the channel, because there's like 10 questions in succession from them on different videos, right? Boom, 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 which is great, because it's making you think, it's getting you excited about it, I guess, getting you interested, and you're like, oh, this is good. And sometimes I do miss questions. Sometimes I go and see someone, like YouTube notifies me, I guess, if I see if there's a question, as in I jump on the channel. But then sometimes I find an old question that hasn't been answered, and I'm like, oh, how did I miss that? So again, just apologise. I'm not trying to answer sometimes I don't answer a person's question because I don't have an answer for you. That happens too. I don't have all the answers. But sometimes we just don't see them. I guess that's just, I don't know, part of life. Okay, so this one is on 5 signs dampness is destroying your gut. So La Katrina says, La Katrina says, this is great. I'm so glad I found your videos very informative. Okay, that's awesome. Question, if your main symptom, or the ones that are more concerning you, are brain fog and exhaustion, blurry vision, and 1 bowel movement a day or 1 every 2 days, then what level of dampness would that person be at? The level of dampness. So it may be no dampness. That's why I thought I would answer this question, because there may be, it doesn't necessarily mean you have everyone doesn't have a level of dampness, or we could say level of dampness 0. Right? And because, so there's a few things here that there's basically nothing here except for the brain fog that is technically a dampness kind of symptom, right? So and And that could be, there could be a lot of things to do with that. A lot of other reasons for that is what I'm trying to say. So blurry vision is to do with blood deficiency much more than it's nothing to do with dampness, right? It's not enough blood or function coming to the eyes to make them work properly. In Chinese TCM, they think of the eyes as relating to the liver, and the blood like being able to sort of nourish the eyes. So this happens as we age. We tend to get blood deficient, and for some people, like if they've had lots of heavy menstrual periods, or they are a vegan or a vegetarian, they might be fine for a while, and then suddenly they notice that sort of stuff happening as they get older. So that's much more of a blood deficiency type of symptom than anything to do with dampness. But the brain fog idea, is this cloudiness in your head, like you just feel like you can't think clearly, and it's not just dampness. What the mechanism of that is that when you have a thought, the idea is that you've got this clear yang that rises to your head, okay, to allow you to have that thought. So this is why you often feel better in the morning. Most people, even healthy, normal people, will feel better in the morning than they will in the afternoon, evening. Because you've rested, you've slept, all your blood and everything's been sort of rejuvenated as best as your body can do in the night. And now some people wake up and they feel sluggish in the morning, and then they get a period where they're like, boom, it takes a while for them to get on. I always just like to think about the example of little kids, right? Like I don't have any kids myself, but I have little nephews and nieces, and particularly my nephew, he was the first one to come along, and I would sleep over at their house sometimes, and he would wake me up with all kinds of crazy things in the morning, because as soon as he, when you're an adult, you wake up, you sort of go, oh, I'll just have a bit more sleep. That's the first thing that pops into my mind when I wake up. I don't think, I do if I have to catch a plane or something happening, you're like, oh, I better get up, right? Or something super exciting that you're getting up for. But on a daily basis, that's kind of not the thought. Whereas for kids, on a daily basis, they're like, boom, and he used to wake up and announce, right? It's the morning, like this, right? Doesn't do it anymore now. But he would, once we had one of those, family holiday things, and, I was sleeping in the same room as the kids, and it was all bunk beds because I'm the single one in the family. So they're all in their other rooms, and I'm in this bunk bedroom, and it was a big room actually, and the bunk beds were kind of spaced apart, so I wasn't like right next to him or anything. But as soon as he wakes up, as soon as that crack of light comes on, he jumps up out of bed. It's the morning, and that's yang. That's clear yang rising. Like you wake up, boom, your clear yang is rising because you've got plenty of yang when you're a little kid. That's good. You should have that, right? And they wake up and they're like ready to go, and they're doing so many crazy things first thing in the morning, right? Like little kids are, the parents are trying to have a little sleep in, and the kids are like doing this and doing that. And I remember that as a kid. My mum used to let us play our violins. We weren't allowed to watch TV, but we were allowed to play our violins. And we used to sometimes wake up at 4:00 in the morning, and just start playing our violins. My mum was happy if we did that, because then we were having a practice, right? But yeah, a bit of a madness, right? So anyway, it's kind of, as you get older, it's normal to have you've got less yang, so it's not as clear. And when you wake up, sometimes for some people it's like, oh, where's my morning coffee? I need that to kind of get going. But then there should be a point where you wake up and you're already awake, but you know what I mean. Like you get this little I don't want to say second wind, but the first wind. You get this feeling of like, yeah, and that can be directly linked to digestion. Okay, so when that clear yang rises, it gives the ability to have those thoughts, those clear thoughts, that clear thinking, and it's directly linked to digestion. So one of the reasons why it's easier to have those sort of thoughts first thing in the morning is because you don't have any food in your stomach. So if you've ever done a course or a conference or a school or anything like that, like you've studied, and you do a class in the morning versus you do a class in the afternoon, the afternoons are the worst, right? Because you're sleepy from the food. And here's a little trick a little tip, right? That I've noticed. So I just recently did a big long course in Brisbane for Chinese herbs. So when we do these classes, they're like 9 to 5, and there'll be like 2 half-hour breaks in the middle, in the morning tea and the afternoon tea time sort of thing, 20 minutes, half an hour, and then they give you a decent lunch break, so an hour and a half lunch break, right? And yeah, so I stayed on my carnivore diet this time when I was there, right? I was like, you know what? Because that's one thing that I know carnivore is good for, is like that productivity. So even if you're not a carnivore, a lot of people do this for productivity, is they stay on in a keto diet or a carnivore diet. Carnivore diet is a keto diet in the morning all the way through the day, and only have carbs in the evening. Now that's not great if you want to lose weight, right? Because if you are trying to lose weight, then you don't want to have carbs in the evening, because you would that would be you'd be wasting doing the diet in the day. Sorry, someone just sent a message there in the chat, and I can't read it properly because it's in Russian, I think, but I don't know if I can translate it or something. I'll see if I can translate it. Hopefully it's not some kind of, I don't think it is a spammy thing. I hope that it's not. I won't translate it in the on the live thing. Let me just put that in there. Oh, someone said, thank you. We changed the time by an hour. Okay, awesome. All right. As in, you must have had daylight saving. So your time is different to my time. In Perth, where I live, we don't have any daylight. That's what that Russian message says. It says, thank you. We changed the time by an hour. Yeah. So in Perth, where I live, there's no time difference. Forever. We never have daylight saving. We just don't do it here. Yeah. So happy days. So does that mean that Ukrainian? Okay, cool. Sorry. It just looks like a Sanskrit to me. You have a lot of different characters similar. I did study Russian once a little bit. My sister went to Russia to help some orphan children, and she helped me study Chinese language, and I did a little course at TAFE, and she did the same course in Russian, and so I went to the Russian course with her and did a little bit of Russian language, and that actually helped me learn a little bit of Chinese, because I'm sure that I think Ukrainian probably has a similar idea where they have a lot of sounds that are not English sounds, like phonetical sounds, and that's the same as with how you pronounce different things in Chinese. Anyway, that was for free. That's totally totally random. All right, so time zone wise, it must be maybe it's much later there than normal. Maybe it's either later or earlier. If it's earlier, that might be better for the stream time, but if it's later, that means I have to get up. I might have to get up earlier, which I don't want to have to do. Anyway, so cool, Boston, right? In the US, you guys have a lot of different time zones in different places. All right, let's finish this question. If people have a question, then please feel free to ask it. This is a good time to ask a question. There's no dumb questions or just feel free to ask if you have something you would like to ask about. Maybe you're thinking about studying Chinese medicine, or you would like to just ask about how does it think about a certain thing. that kind of stuff. I've lost this question now. I can't read it because it's so tiny on the screen. Here we go. All right. So the blurry vision, so we're talking about the brain fog, right? Yeah. So brain fog is that mechanism of that lack of clear yang rising. So when you wake up in the morning, you should have some kind of clear yang to rise. And when people have more stagnation, they tend to be the people that are a bit slower to get started, but once they get started, they feel good, right? So it's almost like because you've rested, things are a bit more blocked and you almost need a bit of exercise to get going. And once you do that exercise, you are able to get moving. And once you get moving, you're all good to go, right? I should just turn my phone upside down. People are calling it. It just kind of distracts me, as it does. Anyway, yeah. So I'll just see if I can translate this thing here. Tell me about a specific case. That's the translation for this Ukrainian thing here. Yeah, so I have to be careful with those kinds of things, unfortunately. In Australia, we have a lot of rules about what we can say about results of things like testimonials and stuff like that. And because this is, it's just hard. I don't want to make it too hard, harder than it is. And it's kind of a bit of a grey area. Like it might be okay, but it's so basically, if a patient comes in and has, they call it a testimonial if you're sort of saying a good result, or a purported testimony if I talk about a result that a patient had, and because this could be seen as advertising potentially, then it becomes difficult. If it was a class, like I'll talk about those things in my classes, and that's sort of like more of a private scenario as well, and people are coming there to learn. I get that you guys are coming here to learn as well. So, it's just tricky with that sort of stuff. And that's a very broad question just to say, talk about a case. Yeah. And the rules here in Australia are very frustrating in a way, like, because, just is. But then what government isn't frustrating, I guess. So, we need a different question to talk about. I have to translate this stuff into Google Translate. How many sessions are needed? All right, so I'll just put that on the screen there. That's a good question, and it's also could be. It depends on what you're actually trying to what the person's trying to achieve, what the patient's trying to treat. This is with acupuncture, I'm going to assume. Is that what you mean, acupuncture or Chinese herbs? Let me put this on here. 10:20. This is going to look a bit weird because I've just scooped the question up off the Google Translate there, but there we go. And I've put something's gone in the way of the mouse, but who cares? Anyway, people can see what that is. So this is also for people that pop into this chat. You know, if they pop in and watch this after the fact and they can't really see, they can see where we're kind of up to. All right, I'm going to have to copy this stuff as well. Hang on a sec. Needles or heating, like warming up. Okay, so right. If something's been going on for a shorter amount of time, it needs less treatments. If something's been going on for a longer time, it needs more treatments. That's one of the best ways to put it. There are some conditions or ailments or symptoms that have been researched with certain amounts of treatments, and they may be able to give people an idea of how often, how frequent, and how often it's needed. So, for instance, like there have been some studies on plantar fasciitis, which is a pain, a condition of pain and inflammation of the foot, and they like that. Those kind of studies are good to help patients understand, hey, you might need to do 6 to 8 treatments before anything's going to happen. And then in the study, blah, 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 this happens. So, some patients might have reported pain relief at session 5, at session 6, and they might have done 8 sessions, this kind of thing. I think on the whole, it depends on your practitioner as well. People tend to underestimate how many treatments are needed and how close together they're needed for results. So when I went to China the first time, they have a strategy there where they just do it every day for 10 days and they do 10 treatments in a row. Now they actually miss out the weekends usually, so it'll be Monday to Friday for 10 days. And that's just what they do. That's just the course. That's a course of treatment. That's like a one course of treatment. So they don't sell people one treatment. They sell people like a course of treatment. Now, in that context, it's cheaper. It's not as cheap now as it used to be. They used to have a full government paid sort of system. Now it's like similar to, somewhere like Australia where it's part government, part not, part private. People do have more private options in healthcare, whereas they used to not have any private options. Where they, like, if a doctor wanted to practice, they had to be in the hospital, otherwise they weren't allowed to practice in a private clinic. That's kind of part of what communism did to medicine over there. So it was almost like, well, they're having this whether they need it or not, almost, right? And do they need that many treatments? So as a Westerner going there, watching that, sometimes you come back, think, well, my patients aren't going to do that. They're not going to want to come in every day. And let's say they're not going to pay $10 a day for a treatment. They're going to pay $100 a day for a treatment, $100 for a treatment. And it's not just, so I know this is a bit more of a bigger scope of the question than you probably were asking for, but this is kind of the things that go through practitioners' heads to come up with these ideas. That, well, people can't afford that. And it's also not just the amount of money, it's the time. So patients often have to travel to the clinic. It might cost them an hour of time. For most people, it'd be at least half an hour faffing around before they come, to get there in the car, getting ready to go or whatever. Like, it's just time out of your day. So let's say it's going to cost you 2 hours of your time, if not more. Like, some of my patients will travel an hour to get to me, 45 minutes an hour. Because they just live on the other side of the river in Perth, or just somewhere, like that's just what they do. So it can cost people 2 to 3 hours of their life to have a treatment, to come to an appointment. And again, these are things that, if your acupuncturist is closer to you, that's a good thing to choose. Like, choose an acupuncturist. I've got a video on YouTube somewhere about how to find a good acupuncturist. And one of those things is, you need to find someone that's close enough to you so that it's not a burdensome thing for you to go to the treatments, because you need to have them quite regularly for it to be effective. I have many colleagues, and even myself, have done quite successful results on people doing it once a week. And like, I'm talking very broadly, like just once a week treatments. One of my main teachers when I first graduated would always say, like, you need to do it more than that, like 2 times a week. I also have, there are some colleagues that I know which will do it, try and do it 3 times a week. You can do it every day. I have had some patients who've needed that. It's not that common. They may have extreme pain, and that's sometimes what's leading people to come in so regularly. So usually, as a broad statement for how many treatments are needed, how many sessions are needed, I would say you don't want to judge whether it's working or not until you've done it for at least 4 to 6 treatments, at least. Right? Now, that's a lot for some people to capacitate to say, right, I'm going to do this 4 to 6 times, and nothing might happen until the 6th time. That for instance, with the plantar fasciitis, that's the more common thing to see. Now, for many conditions of pain, let's talk about pain, it can often get better along the way, right? And so that gives people a bit of hope, and they think, oh, yeah, it's getting better as it goes along. For things that are like chronic deficiency type of conditions, I don't do that many cases like that now with acupuncture. I mostly would do them with herbs. And sometimes I will just explain to patients, like, you're either going to need to do this with acupuncture once a week for months, for two months, right? And never miss an appointment. Like, you need to do that regularly. At least 6, usually I'll say 6 weeks, once a week for 6 weeks, and then they might move to fortnightly and then monthly. Now, I have had some patients who do it like that, and they've done it like that for a year. Like, they come in once every 2 weeks for a year because they feel better doing the treatments, and they've got really serious chronic type of conditions, and usually multi conditions, like as in not just one thing going on, right? I'm just going to translate this. We opened a couple of clinics in Boston. Yep. So you mean you are a practitioner in Boston? Is that what you're saying? Like, well, you went to a few clinics in Boston. Maybe, I'm not sure what you mean, but maybe the translation isn't right, because it just comes up as we opened a couple of clinics in Boston. Yeah, so if people are not doing anything, maybe the translation's wrong. No. Maybe you went to some clinics, or you asked some clinics about that. Or someone opened. Oh, some people opened some clinics. Okay, so some newer clinics are there, right? If you're not doing any herbs, and you've got a chronic deficiency type of condition, it is a longer term approach with Chinese medicine, with acupuncture, I should say. If you are doing Chinese herbs, then the herbs can do some of that legwork, and also diet, right? The diet therapies can do some of that work. So maybe the treatments aren't needed as often. But for most people, I would say you don't want to sort of judge that it's not working unless you've done it. Like, you need to do it no shorter than a week apart. If you can do it twice a week, it tends to be better like that. Yeah. So this is a complicated thing, and it's something that I do discuss with my students from time to time, because it's got to do with how we structure things, pricing structure, availability of practitioners, this sitting down and having a chit chat every time you come in for a consult for a treatment is not really necessary with acupuncture, right? But then patients expect it, right? So if I have a new patient that I haven't seen ever before, there has to be a consultation there, right? There has to be a chit chat. And in Australia, we have a pretty flexible system where you can basically do however you want to do it. You can charge how you want to charge. You can set up your fee structure and your payments, however you want to do it, as long as you are not misleading people. Like, it's got to be transparent, right? You can't sort of mislead people into something, right? That's fraud. And also it's part of the regulations, right? But other than that, right, you can say, you can do it. You can set up the system however you want to set it up, right? So I often tell my students, like, we need to be thinking about this more like a course of treatment, not just one treatment. Acupuncture is like a dose. Each thing you do is a dose of that treatment, and rather than it being like I come in and do it once. Now, a lot of patients these days don't have that conception, but when I first graduated, I think many people would have thought that. And also, I wasn't trained very well on well, the patient had one treatment. What do we do next? Like, what happens now? Well, they'll know when they need to come back in. Well, they don't. And that's your job as a practitioner to kind of help them with that. But at the same time, you don't want to be misleading to people. Or in Australia, we have the guidelines that say we can't incite the unnecessary use of a regulated health service. Like, that's a direct quote from the guidelines, right? So no one really wants to do that. Like, they don't want, I don't think, well, some practitioners might, but most practitioners they want to do the right thing by patients, but we want them to get better. So it is a hard thing with the financial aspect of it, where some people get you're not sure if they're not getting good results just because they're not coming in as often. It might be once every. So if they book an appointment every 2 weeks, but then they cancel that appointment and they change it, and now it's 3 weeks apart, a lot of people just don't realise the difference in that. Whereas if you've got an appointment every week or twice a week and you miss one here or there, it's not that big of a deal. Whereas if you miss one and they're 2 weeks apart, well, now the whole thing's 3 weeks apart, and that can make a big difference there. So when something's really acute, like it's just happened and it's quite serious, it's better actually to have more treatments close together, get rid of the problem, rather than have something linger on. When something's chronic, and in Chinese medicine, something that's chronic is a couple of weeks really to a month that's been going on. It's, and then something that's 6 months or more is what we would consider like a long-term thing, longer-term problem. You're managing that condition sometimes for people, right? As in, you're managing the pain, but maybe they've got a condition that's never really going to go away. It may deteriorate as they get older, as they get on, right? They've got something, a serious condition that's going to deteriorate. You're not able to do anything to necessarily chip away at that condition, but you can improve their quality of life, and there might be people like that. I also have patients that do acupuncture to mitigate the effects of something like chemotherapy when they're going through chemotherapy treatment for cancer, and they might do it once a week for that period of time, and then they don't need it after that, or they don't need it as often. There's just a whole variety of scenarios as to how many sessions are needed and when that's the case, right? Yeah. If anyone else has a question, now's the time to ask it. Yeah. So I think I'm just going to get rid of this one because we don't need it anymore. Another thing to think about with the the structure of things. So is, there's lots of different models with acupuncture, that can make things more accessible for people. So it doesn't mean that practitioners shouldn't get paid to do their job, to do what they're doing. But there's, we need to, as a profession, I think we need to think a bit more about this. What's going to work in the Western world for people, right? Even just making the treatment time shorter, so it's not so long-winded. Yeah. How do you identify a good acupuncturist? That's a great question. Welcome, Burris Bab 7658. 7658. I'm just going to put your question on the thing, on the screen. I have a longer video about this, actually a whole video that is how to find a good acupuncturist, how to find a good herbalist. And I kind of went through like a step-by-step guide of things that you should be looking for. I'll see if I can remember it off the top of my head. Sometimes I just make videos where it's just like I have an idea, or sometimes I have a thing that I just want to say. You probably can tell I'm just ranting. I'm like, I've got to say this thing. It's so frustrating me. Or something I'm making it. Often I make a video because a patient has come in and I'm making the video for them, right? Like, here's how to do this elbow massage. Here's how to do this thing. And then anyway, but this particular video that I made on this stuff, I put a lot of effort into it, really thinking about it, right? Now, one of the things that I think is important is like I mentioned just a second ago, where they are in relation to you, I think that's a bit different to a herbalist, right? So if you are acupuncture, you have to have the treatment on you. So you don't want it to be so far away, even if they're really, really good. Okay, if they're really good and you don't have any other things to do with your time, you're a person of leisure or something like that, it might not matter to you. Okay, or you really, really need to see that person because that's the only person who understands you or whatever, then do the traveling and go and see them. But for the most part, acupuncture is a dose thing. So as in, it's not just going to be one thing that they're going to do on you. They're going to need to see you regularly. So you don't want it to be so far away that it's an arduous thing to you. So I would say location, not the first thing, but location is one of the things that's important, right? So not so much a good acupuncturist, but the right acupuncturist for you. So firstly, we might whittle it down to the people that are around you, where you Google that. Most people start off with that. They start off with a Google search. Okay, let me find the 5 people near me or something like that. I think it's warranted. I think it's okay. I don't see why practitioners wouldn't want to do this. You can have a chat with the practitioner first. Now, some practitioners are so busy, and that might be a sign that they're a good acupuncturist, because if they're really busy and they've got no time to chat with you on the phone whatsoever, and because they're only seeing patients, well, something's got to be right about that in a way. Okay, that's probably a good thing. That's probably a good sign, because in most countries, I want to say, except for China, it's all pay by the person. So why would people come back in and pay for a thing if it's not helping them? Why would they come back in? Why would that practitioner be busy? They wouldn't be busy. So that's part of it. Maybe, but other than that, you could have a chat with them and ask them about, have they helped people with your condition before? And not just have they done that before, but do they feel that they have the capacity to help you? So when I first graduated, obviously there was a lot of things that I saw that I'd never treated before. But why would I take that case on, right? Because I feel like I could help them, that I feel that I either had mentorship from another practitioner, that I have the knowledge from the system of Chinese medicine that I'd learned that could help that person. That's part of it. So I also think what makes a good acupuncturist is someone who's committed to further study in some way. Now, all acupuncturists in most of the countries have to do a thing called CPD, which is continuing professional development or continuing professional education. And that just means you have to do 20 hours usually a year of further training. So it just means you go to courses, or you might, in some countries they even accept it if you've read a journal article or read some books and you log that down. You go to a conference and stuff like that. Okay, so those things are important and they're good, right? But that doesn't mean you're committed to further study. Like some of those people are doing here, there, and everywhere, a course here, a course there, and have they really learnt anything? This is me having a little rant about stuff. So I think sometimes you could find this out by either having the knowledge from that practitioner, like as in getting to know them a little bit, calling their office, finding that stuff out, or looking on their website. A lot of these people will put that. If they say, look, I learned from this teacher and this is a lineage system and this, and I'm part of this sort of, this is the history of how I've been trained and things like that. That stuff can be really useful for you to know, because that means that they have a teacher. If something goes wrong in their clinic, which it will, not every practitioner is going to get it right every time, and then they can kind of go back and, they've got access to mentorship. That means that practitioner's, committed to learning. So that's one of the things I think makes a good practitioner. And you've just got to find the rapport with them, which means like some people don't mind if a person's a bit short and sharp, or they're a bit quirky, they dress a bit weird. Some people want their practitioner to wear a suit, and others don't mind if they're in the tie-dye and they've got like beads around them and singing bowls and gongs and stuff like that. Some people want that. So there's different strokes for different folks. Like different things are going to appeal to you, but you have to feel that practitioner cares about you and is able to help you, because that's part of the therapeutic result, right? So sometimes it's almost like an interview when you go to an appointment. Now, you don't want to do this too many times because it'd be expensive, but you are sort of looking, is this person going to be able to help me, right? I've seen a lot of patients in the last 5 years, more in the last 5 years than ever before, that are second opinion patients. And maybe it's because of the YouTube channel. People find me from, all over the world and shit like that. But, even in Perth, some people say, oh, I've been to this other practitioner and they're interested in Chinese medicine, but that didn't work out for them. And it wasn't that practitioner was not great. It's just that it just wasn't right for them, like in some way, or maybe that practitioner wasn't great. I don't know. But hopefully that helps to answer your question. So don't be afraid to ask the practitioner, like as in call the office and ask the questions, right? About, the thing that you're coming in for. Have they got experience with that? Right? What kind of, and there's a lot of styles of acupuncture that people use. And if you've had acupuncture before, for instance, and you've had it all like local points, like you love to be needled on your back and you love cupping and moxa and stuff like that, and this person only does tan balance method and they don't do any of that local stuff, maybe that's not going to be right for you if you don't like that. Some people love to be, I don't know, they love their back to be treated every time, I find it helpful if a patient does tell me, oh, I've had this before and I want that again. Like, that's helped me. I like that. Now, if that hasn't helped them, they've had that before and it hasn't helped them, I don't want to keep doing the same thing over and over that hasn't helped them. Some patients, they don't know anything about the different styles of acupuncture, which is totally fine, and that's good, and they just are happy to do what you suggest, and go from there. All right, we've got a couple of other questions here. So, same person. Most Chinese herb stores here, California, don't have the real herbs. What? But sell lookalike herbs. What do you mean, lookalike herbs? How could you do, what, like plastic herbs? Are they Chinese people? I've never heard of that. Like, how would the effectiveness be? How would the efficacy be if they're not the real herbs? Like, that doesn't make any sense. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that sounds crazy. It probably is crazy. So then you've got this other question: how much should one worry? Yeah. So look, this is an issue with Chinese medicine. Chinese stores, right? Look, there's a big thing in China in general, and I don't want to speak bad about the Chinese. Otherwise I might not be able to go back there. Look, I love China. I do. I love going there. I've been there more than 13 times. And I obviously love Chinese medicine. And I do love going to China. Like, I enjoy that part of life. Like, I've had really great experiences. But there's some things about Chinese culture that are just like a bamboozlement to me. One of those things is I think it's part of communism, as in it's a runoff of communism. If you are told to do a job and you just pretend to do the job, like a quota sort of scenario, they don't see any problem with that. They don't seem to do that. So I'm going to tell you this weird story, right? When I was first in China, it was 2001. I was very young. I've got a little photo of, where is it? Oh, here it is. I keep this on the top of my desk, right? That's me in China the first time, and that's not my teacher. It's just a random Chinese guy that was there in the train station, and he was just sort of shuffling along, and when I squinched up next to him like this, like with my arms like that, and I just walked along, and he had his head down, and I said to my friend who was with me, I said, take a picture. I gave him my camera. This was one of these little, the cameras that had to be developed. Anyway, and as he took the photo, the flash came up because it was in the dark in the train station, and his eyes lit up like this. Anyway, so I keep this in my clinic up there at the top. I had it down there because it's usually in front of the screen that I'm using for this, right? And when I pack all this down, I put this in front of the screen to sort of hide the screen. Anyway, and people see it and then they come in at the thing and they say, is that your teacher? But that's what I thought that the Chinese would be like when I first went there. Like, this guy had everything he probably owned bundled up into this little sack around there. He really smelled strange, and he was, he had this awesome beard, sort of long beard. Anyway, that wasn't the story I was going to tell you, but that was for fun. That was for free. Yeah, so that was me back then, right? And I remember thinking, man, there was some of these things I would see people do, and I just was bamboozled by it. I was perplexed. I didn't know what was going on. So at one scenario, and there's a reason why I'm telling you this story, because it's going to help you understand this issue that you have with the Chinese shops selling these random things. So when you go there as a foreign student, they have accommodation in the hospital that they set up for you. So they had this floor just for foreign students to stay in. So they had 8 floors of the hospital, and then this 7 floors. So it was all sort of hospital wards, and then the top floor was a special one that they built, like a accommodation center kind of thing, right? And they said, oh, you can stay in here, right? As in, that's what, And eventually I moved out and stayed in the hotel across the road. Or vice versa, I can't remember, whatever it was. So I remember coming into this place, and it was all carpeted floors, and the room was massive. And then eventually, after a few days, I realized like all the other rooms were filled up with patients, and I was like, oh, okay, right. So they literally didn't have enough foreign students staying there at the time, so they'd filled up the rooms with the patients, which was fine. One morning I'm sleeping in my room and the doctors just come into the room. I was like, I'm not a patient. Like I'm trying to have a sleep in. Anyway, so that happened once, and then afterwards they just left me alone. But what I noticed is every morning this little guy who was probably 18, but he looked like he was about 14. He would mop the carpet. He would mop the floor, like across, and it was a big hallway. He had his bucket and a mop, and he would mop that carpet every day. Every day he would mop the carpet. Maybe once a week, I don't know. But I just used to see him regularly mopping this carpet. Like, and I was there for weeks and weeks, right, staying in this place. And I was like, why is... And he spoke no English, right? This was at a time when not that many people in China did speak English, right? Before they had the Olympics there, and stuff like that. And I didn't know much Chinese at all, like hardly any. I was just barely getting by. So, there was no phone. I had to cycle down to the internet cafe to send an email to tell my family I was still alive, type of thing. So I used to have this little red translation book, like a little dictionary. And I was trying to like fucking find out, but it's hard to find out, why is this guy mopping the carpet? Why does he mop the carpet? Anyway, a few weeks after I'd been there every day watching this guy mop the carpet, my teacher arrived, who's been to China many, many times, before, and he used to take groups of people over and stuff like that. And he'd organised for me to come to the hospital. So he knew a lot of people there and everything. And, he's like, how are you going? Is everything all right? We're having dinner or something like that, lunch or something. And, where are you eating? Like, he was making sure I wasn't sort of eating off the side of the road carts, which I was, because it was so cheap. And he's like, oh, you're going to get sick. Don't eat the 4-yuan chicken rice thing, right? Which I was eating that. I never got sick, by the way. But I was a vegetarian then, so I used to just probably eat the rice and the bok choy without the chicken. So it's probably 3-yuan. Anyway, I said to him, Wade, why is this guy mopping the carpet? I have to know. I just can't figure it out. Like, he mops every day, he's mopping that carpet. And he said, well, Marie, that's his job. Like, he probably mops the floor on all the other floors, and he comes up to that floor and it's carpet on that floor. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, why would he mop it? He goes, that's just his job. He doesn't know how to think that he shouldn't be mopping the carpet, or to question or to ask anything, or he just does it. He just does his job. And that's like a remnant of communism, right? They're just told, you do this job, this is the job you do. And they don't think about, why do I do it? They don't have the capacity in that system, right? I'm not saying all Chinese are like that, but like, there's a lot of that there, where they just do something because they are told that's what you have to do, or that's a part of that. That's my little job. So if they're told every day you've got to lift this cup up 10 times, they'll just do it, right? I mean, I even saw people in COVID time, like I follow these people online that show you, the behind the scenes of China and stuff. And, one lady had a quota about how many COVID tests had to be submitted. And there's a video of her just like pulling down her mask, taking a swab, swabbing her own mouth, putting it in a sample things, sealing it up and putting it over there, taking another sample, pulling her mask down, swabbing herself over and over and over to fill the quota of the swabs she was supposed to give to the government to say, we've tested all these people. Well, there wasn't enough people to fill the quota that she was supposed to get 100 tests a day or whatever. So she just was swabbing herself, right? That's the kind of thing people do, right? So I'm not saying that makes it okay, but that's how a lot of Chinese are sort of like, well, it looks like it, so it must be it. It's that kind of idea. Now, that doesn't exactly explain why they've got fake Chinese herbs. But it's like the mentality is totally different, right? And these people obviously don't care about the medicine, because how could they? Like if I gave someone this and said, right, you need buy her, we're going to give you this. And this isn't really buy her, this is some plastic thing. Because it happens with rice, right? I've seen them make rice out of plastic. Why would you make rice is cheap enough. Like, why would you make a rice out of plastic? Well, it looks like rice. It's pretty much rice. It looks like rice. Why wouldn't we? Why can't we sell that? It's same, but different. It's not exactly the same. It's happened to me when I've bought stuff, right? I've bought things and I've said, I want this, this, and this. I've chosen them out. And then when they come in the shipping container, they're completely not those things. They're different things, like different colors. They're different. Like I ordered clocks once because I had this retro store and it said, your sample text here. I'm like, I can't fucking sell that. Like I can't sell a clock that says your sample text here underneath it. I just throw it out. Like, this is just random what they do, right? So if I give my patient this medicine because I think they need that, I want to know if that has worked, because that's teaching me, was I right? Was I right in thinking that that's what they needed, right? So that teaches me that, one, for me, it's because of like a pulse diagnosis would kind of indicate that they needed that. Is my pulse diagnosis right? Did I give the right formula? But if the medicine itself isn't even the medicine that I'm saying it is, well, how am I going to learn anything at all? So obviously those people, unfortunately, the guy that's saying, I didn't put that on the thing. The most Chinese herbs in stores in California don't have the real herbs. They have lookalike herbs. So that's obviously they don't care about the medicine enough to actually be wanting to learn it. Like that's bamboozling to me. I can't imagine that. I'm just like, get out of the profession, do something else. Go and be an engineer or do something else. That's madness. I just cannot imagine that. Now, there are some herbs that are like substitute herbs that still can do the job and they're cheaper, right? And there may be some herbs are really hard to get. So a good example would be ginseng. So there's renshen, there's taizashen, there's dangshen. They all do a similar job. They're just different grades of cheapness. So renshen is super expensive versus taizashen's about a third, I think, of the price of the renshen. And the dangshen is, even a little bit cheaper than the taizashen. Now, they are different plants. They're completely different plants, but they do similar jobs. So that's not a bad thing. Like that's a common thing that's done in Chinese medicine, right? So it might be because of the cost, right? And many practitioners do that. Why would we, if one herb that's similar, taizashen can do just as good a job as renshen for the most part. Well, we don't need to charge the patient 3 times the price, right? For that. And also some herbs are really hard to get. They might be going out of, they might be becoming extinct or becoming harder to source and things like that. That's a big part of it, right? So, I think that's a real shame. And it's also a shame for the profession of Chinese medicine because it gives it a bad name. And then people think, oh, that's dodgy. That Chinese medicine isn't really, So I find it hard to believe. I'm not saying I disbelieve you, but I find it hard to believe that someone would do that because like, why? I just don't understand why they would do that. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, to me, I want to learn this better. Like, I want the patients to get better. I don't want them to not get better. Yeah. So why, if you're using the wrong medicine? Now that brings me to this other question, which is a great question. How much should one worry about heavy metals or toxins coming in herbs coming from China? So there are companies that actually care about that stuff, and that's the company I use is the only company in Australia that does separate testing, not on every single herb or every single time, but they do periodic testing on the herbs for heavy metals and pesticides and residues, and they also have a what do you call it, like a like they have an ethical kind of sourcing system that they use, right? So they don't just kind of try to rape and pillage the environment to get whatever they can for the herbs. And that's a part of, like, you know, Chinese medicines, like, where do they come from? Like, how are they growing? Like, are they growing in a field that's next to a factory that is leaching out, you know, whatever? Because that is a valid point, right? So it's really going to come down to your supplier and knowing that supplier cares about that stuff. So the other supplier that does this is in the US is called Spring Wind. So that company is also like the same. I'm pretty sure they have a similar kind of ethical kind of standard because they are sort of part of it. So the company I use called Empirical Health, and they for a long time they were using the Spring Wind stuff. I'm not sure if they still use that now, but you know, it's sort of like, I think it might be the American version of it, sort of thing. So you need to find out, right? From, and the practitioner themselves should know. Now, some practitioners, they don't think about it maybe, or they don't realize it could be an issue. So you also have certified organic things. There are some herbs that can be gotten certified organic. It's some of the herbs we have right here, like this is certified organic. This by her is, which is like means that farm has been certified not to use pesticides and stuff like that. But it doesn't actually guarantee that the heavy metals are not in the herbs. So something this is not a foolproof method, but this is something that you can consider. And this is why Chinese medicine's probably gotten away with a bit of this stuff in the past. If you do a decoction, you boil the herbs. So that means you take, and it's supposed to be a decoction, you get a bag of sticks and leaves and you boil it and you drink it. A lot of the residues of those things, the heavy metals and the toxins and stuff, stays in the plant and doesn't come into the water. Now, you'd have to be 100% sure depending on what the thing is. But if you eat this, all of it, so that's called raw herbs ground into powder, then you have to be sure that they are organic or no heavy metals residue or pesticide residue in them. It's more the heavy metals, right, that stays in the plant. So that's important. And so a lot of things that are decoctions, like people are not eating all the dregs, they're not eating all the herbs, the sticks and the leaves, they're just drinking that liquid, right? So that's a big thing. So if a cheaper way of doing Chinese herbs is to say, okay, this would normally be a decoction, would have, let's say these wouldn't be, but let's say you had these herbs here, you had a bag of this stuff, and instead of boiling it up, you put it into a grinder, you grind it into a powder, and you mix that powder with water, you bring it to the boil on the stove. So you use less raw ingredients, so it's cheaper, right? Because like the cost of one bag of those herbs could be $30 a day. Like for some of my patients, it's $30 a day. For some of my patients, it might be $6 or $7 if there's only 2 or 3 herbs in there. But if there's like some herbs are 60 grams of something, it's like, you know, it's going to be $30 a day. So they might be able to spend that $30 a day over a week. And that's the raw herbs ground to powder method. And that's, you know, it's not as strong as boiling it all up and drinking that liquid each day. But yeah, there's just different methods that are used to try to make the herbs more accessible for people, as in cheaper or more affordable, but also like to protect the herbs themselves. Like some of these herbs are hard to get, or getting harder to get. So that's part of that ethical sourcing that the company has. So I can highly recommend Empirical Health. The guy that runs that business is Dr. Simon Feeney. He's been on my show many times. We just did an interview in Brisbane, and I've just been too busy to edit it properly, but I will put it up soon in the next couple of months. And we were talking about that exact issue about, the toxins in herbs and different things like that. But we already have some videos on that, and you can go and watch that stuff. And he's got his companies in the US as well. So, and they ship from Port Macquarie in Australia over to the US. So that all the herbs that I use, pretty much almost all, like 99%, come from their place. All right, so we can probably do one or two more things because I'll have to go soon. Good, we've got some good questions happening here. Another one from Barris Bab. Apologise in advance if I say people's YouTube's names wrong, because I sometimes do that. We're just going to put this question: how much training? Hang on, let's put this here. How much training should a TCM? Oh, hang on. I'll just do one thing at a time. I'm just trying to put the question. I was thinking, I could put the question on and read it at the same time, but no, I can't do that. I don't have one of these fancy programs that you pay money for to put questions on, so I have to just do it manually. All right. How much education should a patient receive from the TCM doctor while in the healing journey? This is better for their condition and if the herbs and the acupuncture are actually working. Yeah. That's a great question. I think it's going to depend on the practitioner and the patient. Like, for instance, like obviously, you know me. If you've been on this channel, you kind of know me. So I have a lot to say about a lot of things, and I have a good way of explaining most things, not everything. But not every patient wants that. So even patients that come into my clinic, like, nor do I have the time to go through all of this stuff with every patient. I just don't. So sometimes I will send them videos, and that's how I started this channel. I was like, okay, there was things that I was explaining over and over and over, and I was thinking, I'm running out of time. Or I want to give this patient more, or have them have that level of understanding should they want that. And that's how I started the channel. Literally, that's how I started it. I was like, okay, I'm going to make these videos to explain the process for the people that want that. Some people don't want that. So some practitioners just, and that's totally fine. It's not a criticism of those practitioners, okay? There are two different skills, being a practitioner and being a teacher. There are two different skills. Now, I have the skill of being a teacher. I'm a good teacher. I can teach lots of things. I could probably learn something random if I really wanted to, and I could probably teach it. Like, I'm one of those people that can teach something, right? Even if I don't really know how to do it myself that well, I could probably learn it and teach it. Especially if you don't understand it, and that's why I'm probably good at Chinese medicine, because I never did understand it. And I was like, this sounds like woo-woo and crazy and like a mad, like not madness. I was like, this sounds like something. It was interesting enough for me to want to learn it, but I was like, I still can't get my head around it. So I had to really think about it. So some practitioners just don't have the skill of being able to explain things, or they might not have the passion for it, the drive for it. They just might not even make the time for it. So it depends on how much time you have with a patient. And for some people, I find it can be overwhelmed for them. So you're saying how much should they give? Sometimes too much is not helpful to that patient. I think it's not a good idea to try to gatekeep the knowledge, to think, oh, well, if I tell them this self-help thing, they won't come back and see me, right? If patients get better, however they get better, to me, that's the right thing. You've done the right thing. And if I get a patient better and they don't need me anymore, or they don't need me as often anymore, well, a new patient will come and take their place. You have to have that mentality. Some practitioners don't have that mentality. They have that scarcity mentality where they think, oh, well, you know, I like, you know, like if a patient wants to do self-moxa at home, that means they're not going to come and do it at my clinic, right? They're not going to come and do the treatment at my clinic because they're going to be doing it at home. Some practitioners don't want to teach patients how to do that because they want them to come to the clinic and do it. Like, not every patient's suitable to do self-moxa at home. They might burn themselves too easily or not have the mental capacity to do that without the potential of burning themselves. So it's not like I show every patient how to do that. And some patients, I spend a long time showing them how to do it. They come back and they're like, yeah, I didn't do that. I just want to come in and have you do it on me, which is totally fine. But I also think it's not great. I have seen a lot of people in the course of my practice where they said, I wanted someone to explain it to me, and they went to a practitioner. No offense to Chinese people, but they mostly have been Chinese, and they just say things like, oh, very safety, or very, very danger, or very, very, you know, no worries. Like, just like sort of, I don't think the practitioner's trying to fob them off, but they don't know how to explain it properly, or they just use sort of little words that are kind of, you know, oh, your chi very weaky, or something like that. You know, your chi very weak. And you're like, well, what does that mean? Like, help me. How do I fix it? Or you're very dampy, very dampness. You know, this kind of like Chinesey, Chinglishy sort of language that isn't really Chinese, and it's not really English, and it's sort of explain, like, 'cause I'm only saying they're all things I've heard Chinese practitioners say, right? Like, I had a teacher that was, every point we tried to learn in Chinese medicine school was either, oh, very safety or very danger. And you're like, what does that mean? Like, explain it properly. We'll never give them the proper explanation. Like, you were just told every point sort of fitted into this category of very safety or very danger. And you were just like, not every teacher was like that, but, you know, there's also a part of Chinese culture in which is part of Chinese medicine, in the teaching process, where they don't just give you everything, okay? And so maybe practitioners pass that on to their patients as well a little bit, or they think maybe they don't know how to explain it in such a way that it would make sense for a patient to make use of the knowledge. But like, when you learn from a teacher in China, I'm talking about a Chinese person or a foreigner goes there to learn, right? They don't just give you a lesson and say, here's all my secrets, or here's all my, because it is their secrets, right? Here's all the stuff that I've learned in my practice. Like, I'm very generous with my knowledge to people. Like, if I have a student that like I've had students over the years, many, many, many years, right? And, you know, there's stuff that I've learned about running a business. There's stuff that I've learned about how to deal with difficult scenarios that might happen. And that, you could say that's my secret sauce, right? Because that's cost me money to learn that information. And you're now going to be a competitor with me when you graduate. Why would I teach you that? Why would I share that with you? There can be a little bit of that, right? Just in the culture of this sort of medicine, right? I think it comes down to a person's mindset. So if they're sort of like in that scarcity mindset, they probably would think like that. Whereas if they're in a mindset of like, well, there's plenty to go around. If you succeed, then I succeed, right? Because it's like me hearing that horrible story about that person, or that whatever those herbalists are selling these fake herbs in California. Like, that breaks my heart, because that means that it's putting a bad name on Chinese medicine, and no one succeeds from that, right? Like, maybe you saved a bit of money, or you scammed them out of some money for some herbs or something that was grass, right? Like, another example is I bought these bloody moxa sticks off Temu. I shouldn't have probably bought moxa sticks off Temu. But they were sawdust. They weren't even moxa. It wasn't even moxa inside there. Like, I'm going to make a video about that for the channel, right? I'm like, why would you do it? Like, moxa isn't that expensive. I'm sure that it's, you know, and this is, again, this plastic rice thing, and this, like, you know, this imitation culture that China has. And they just don't see anything necessarily wrong with it. They're just like, well, I made my money, you know, just, that's it. I'm done with it. Like, there's no love of the medicine itself. Now, that's not the case with everyone. Like, I know more people in Chinese medicine that love it, and that's why I'm surprised to hear that other story, because like all the people I know now that do Chinese medicine, all the colleagues I have, they really love it and they really care about it. And I've never met as many people, since I've been doing it in the last 8 years, doing the classical Chinese medicine, that love Chinese medicine this much. Like all my TCM friends, some of them, they love it. I think they love it. They do, but they don't love learning it more. Like, and I've met a massive amount of people that are just like, yeah, they love learning it more. They just love the scholarly approach of it. And there are, there's lots of practitioners in Chinese medicine that are kind of like that, and maybe they write some books, or they do academic research as well as see patients and things like that. So anyway, this is a bit of a rant. I'm going to have to finish this soon because my phone keeps ringing. I think a certain patient needs an appointment, and they've rung a couple of times. Yes, let me have a look here. What are we doing here? Let me take this off. We've got one more question there. So this is moxa sticks. Is it safe to make moxa sticks on your own? Can you make moxa sticks on your own at home? That's something I've never done, partly because moxa sticks are not that expensive, right? And they're not really hard to get. I mean, maybe that one day they might be hard to get. I guess you could, like, I've got some moxa here somewhere. Where is it? Is it on this shelf? I had it the other day. Is it there? No, it's not there. So if you, like, for instance, like my supplier has this really good quality moxa, and maybe I should try and make a moxa stick out of it. But I don't know how you obviously just roll it together, and you'd have to put some paper around it or something like that. But I think the faffing around that you do, just buy the sticks. Like, it's not that hard. The more yellower inside and less stick little pieces it is, like the more ground it is, more powdery it looks. Just by looking at the end of the stick, the better the quality is of that stick. So when they grind the moxa, I think it's when they grind it. Like, I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to look into this process a bit more. But they do have grades of moxa. So it's maybe either the part of the plant that's used, which would make sense, more the leaf rather than the stick part, but also how fine it's ground. So you can grind something and then put it through a sieve, and it's really just powdery, and then it's condensed together. I don't know whether you would be able to roll that tight enough for it to work properly as a stick, because the less tight it is, the more air that's in there, the more the stick would just fall apart, and that could be quite dangerous probably. So it is a thing that is done, and that's how many moxa sticks are made. They're just made by people in the countryside making them, and then sort of selling them to factories and stuff like that. It used to be how they were mostly made. But they probably have machines to make them that'd be better to make it. What I'd suggest you do when you're buying moxa sticks, if you're really into doing it, is don't buy too many at once. Just buy one packet of the thing, test it out, and if you like it, then buy more of that same one. The higher grades are more expensive, but they tend to last longer. Like, the stick doesn't deteriorate as easily. They tend to be less smoky. They still have smoke, definitely, but it's the smell of the smoke is more tolerable. It's less stinky kind of a smoke. I use a lot of moxa in my clinic, so I have all kinds of moxa, and I've used different grades of sticks, and like there's one grade of moxa stick that I cannot find in Australia, and I've not been able to find it online, and I bought it in China, and it's going to run out soon, so I'm going to have to go back to Guangzhou just to get that moxa, because it's like, I was like, oh, this is really good. And I just assumed when I bought it, I can get it online, but I cannot find it now. But it's really a good quality type of moxa. So You just kind of have to try. And look, I bought some moxas off Temu and they were fine. And then I bought this other moxa sticks and I was like, what? Like, I don't think this is moxa. And I was like, I broke it apart and it was like a sawdust kind of a thing. And that stuff isn't great because then you don't know what's in there, right? Like, and this is moxa is a bit of an unregulated part of Chinese medicine. Like in Australia, we have therapeutic devices, and it's supposed to be, I don't want to say too much because otherwise the price will go up a lot if the TGA has to regulate the moxa sticks. But yeah, it is a thing that, like, there could be anything in there. Like, there could be random things in there, sticks, like glue, who knows? Like, if the Chinese are making random herbs in California in their shop, what are they putting in those sticks? So what I'm getting at is don't just burn random stuff. Like if it's, yeah, be careful. So anyway, so that's probably the stream for today. I have to pack all this stuff up and see a patient now and answer my phone. There's hundreds of messages on there. But once I get into these things, I could talk and talk and talk. So, yeah, we'll see what's happening. There will be a stream next week. Possibly the following week there will not be a stream, or it'll be earlier. We'll see what happens because I think I have another appointment that morning, but definitely next week there'll be a stream. So hopefully people are doing well. And if you have a question, if you've been watching this after the fact and you think, oh, I've missed the stream, I want to ask a question, just put it in the comments and I'll try and answer it next week. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.